Hello, and welcome back to Overcoming Adversity Podcast, Season 2, sponsored by Next Level Recovery Associates, featuring Mr.
Matthew Williams
and Mrs.
Sarah Frias.
And myself, Amanda Marino. Thank you so much for tuning in and being here with us today. So, how are you guys doing?
Good. I think I'm doing really good.
Happy Monday.
Thank you.
Is it Monday?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's Monday.
I love Mondays. I love Mondays.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like Monday. It feels like Tuesday.
You love Mondays because the kids go to school.
I love Mondays because I haven't been to the gym all weekend and I got to go to the gym by myself and sit in the sauna and restart. So Mondays are actually like Fridays for me, if that makes sense.
Monday.
Yeah. It's my favorite.
Love that.
Yeah, I had no idea what day it was all last week because being on vacation, I had no clue. I came back on a Thursday. Yeah, but that was all interesting. But we're definitely not going to dive into that today because I'm not even going there. I'm going to block that out. So we have an awesome topic today. Matt, what do you want to say about this topic if you want to introduce it to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about families in general with somebody that's trying to get sober or in the fact that like the suffering the family goes through leading up to it or the whole thing.
Yeah, so families, addiction, substance use disorder, the better term now, and mental illness, and just the role the family plays, and how often, our greatest struggle is not just our client; it's trying to help the family, come around.
I know for me personally, I can relate to. I'm the only one in my family that struggles with, or struggled, or is in sobriety or in recovery. The only time I ever met somebody. Was on my mom's side. It was my mom's brother. And she's from Pennsylvania, and we went to a funeral, and I was young. So I was kind of like, not forced to go, but like, hey, you're coming, because it was one of those things. And I wasn't staying home by myself. And I remember going to this service and honoring the person that I really didn't know, because like my mom brought me. And then we had to go visit Uncle Harold.
Harold.
Uncle Harold lived literally like from Saturday Night Live. He lived in a van, like a nice trailer in the middle of the woods in Pennsylvania, and by choice. Mm-hmm. And basically, he was drinking himself to death. And I faintly remember going there, walking in, and being like, "What are we doing?" It was my first. It's like my memory of it is just walking in there. Not really remembering what my mom was going through, but just the fact that it was a sad time because someone had passed away. And just walking in there and just looking around, there's ashtray. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like drinking and smoking and just like this, like right out of a movie type deal. And it was like
kind of a stigma stereotype picture of that.
It was the first and last time that I met and saw Uncle Harold.
Wow.
And I remember.
And you remember it so clearly. You're like describing it like
it was crazy.
It's in your brain.
And it was in my brain because when I got sober, I was like, there's no one else in my family. And I think what was really hard for my mom as I was going in like the downward spiral things of drinking and, not drinking all the time, but when I drank, it was like consequences, it was trouble, it was just a lot of different things going on, and how it made her feel and connect to her brother. And watching, like seeing that brief moment I was probably like 12 or 13 or 14, and I wasn't, I didn't come around to getting sober until I was 28, but kind of remembering that and having that experience of, man, how crazy it is for family members to watch someone they love blow their life up repeatedly.
Yeah.
And then connecting and be like, man, this isn't the first time for my mom. And I'm sure she's very, very scared because she watched it kill her brother by choice. Like that you say by choice, but that's what he wanted. He wanted to live there.
And there are lots of people like that.
Sure.
And they just want to be left alone, and that's why he's in the woods.
Dog.
But that brings up a great point, which is, the comparisons, right?
Sure.
So your mom probably is like, no, that's not my son, but you had your own version of a problem because this is on a spectrum, right? And there's different phases and different levels, and there's not one picture of what someone with a struggle goes through. And a lot of family members can be like, well, I have a close person in my life. They lost their daughter to heroin addiction, but the other daughter just drinks and doesn't work and lives on disability. So as long as she's not as bad as the daughter that overdosed on heroin, like she's not that bad.
Yeah.
The comparison thing too, and I'm sure it was hard for your mom to identify for a while to try, putting you in the same box as Uncle Harold.
Yeah. And I think it's really hard because especially with like parents that have multiple children, like I could give a ton of different examples of people that I grew up with where both came from the same background, same upbringing, around the same age. And, for a while, one was on like, just to be a doctor, who is now a doctor. And then the other brother was just kind of like not doing anything and, ended up getting, blowing his life up, ruining everything that he was, he's a great athlete, super intelligent, did well in school. And it was like they both came from the same spot.
And they both had
family, the same house, the same parents, the same upbringing, the same exposure to everything. Yet one was not really into drinking and having a good time and was focused on, his studies and sports and being in great shape. And the other one, while he was great at a great athlete and very dialed in with his program for working out and had the same things kind of at school, just going the other way. And now, thankfully, is sober and doing very well and like very professional.
Yeah.
But
I bet you if you ask both of them, like their experiences of what they experienced and
Totally
what they're
different.
growing up in the same household, like they both experienced very different things. One probably says, oh everything was amazing. One probably felt like maybe different than, maybe not included in, maybe felt like had some anxiety. Like they lived in the same house and had the same whatever, and it could be the greatest upbringing, but one person's experience of what they went through, it's baffling when you deal with family systems like that.
Sure.
When you deal with a family that, one kid is, and sometimes that's the hard thing, an overachieving sibling or a disabled sibling I've heard, or, so many versions, and they just have different experiences. And the families go through a lot. So that's one thing is like, I definitely feel compassionate, like your family, you didn't go through, we talked about, one of our things as a topic being trauma and, you're breaking generational traumas, and personally, you don't have that experience. You come from a family that maybe was a little codependent on you and enabling, but you have a great upbringing and family.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was the miracle baby. So, and both my brothers were adopted. So I was like the one that they thought they couldn't have. And then they had me and I was the girl, so I was the princess. And,
of course.
You still are.
I
see Mama Sandy in action.
Oh, yeah.
You're still the princess.
Yes, good old Mama Sandy. So I definitely, like it says, it kind of jumps. My mom's father was an alcoholic, really bad one. Then my parents, my mom doesn't even drink. And then here I am, and I don't think they were prepared for it. They've never experienced that besides, obviously my mom, seeing her father drink, but, now it's your daughter who you love, right? And like, you want to, like, how do you separate from like enabling and like, how do you do that? And I think that's where it is, like the tough love and enabling. And I was definitely enabled for a long time.
Well, we've found a sweet spot, I think, at Next Level between a tough love and enabling.
For
right?
sure.
Like, I don't believe in like leave your kid on a park bench.
It may get to that point though.
It may, but like, I think that there's still ways that we can let people know that we should listen. If you are willing to get help, we're here. But it used to be like, we're cutting you off, like just, we're not taught. It was a very different approach.
I agree.
So there can be a way that if you do this and this, we're going to help you and support your recovery and your healing journey. You can still show up like that. You know what I mean? But I think tough love, what it was years back, was almost hurting people.
Yeah, I think my vision of it is not that like, get out of, like see you on the streets, it's definitely not like that, but there's boundaries and there's rules. And, my parents are big supporters of, as long as I'm doing the right thing, they're always here to support me, but then it gets to the point where it's like, when I wasn't doing the right thing and the manipulation and the lying and not really knowing what was going on, because I was down in Florida, my parents were in Cape Cod, so I definitely, you can see the patterns though as time goes on, because it never lasts, like I can always say like, oh, I'm going to meetings and I'm going to a convention. I used to use that a lot. And then it led to me going to treatment again,
Right.
And now they
When you were missing, you were at a convention? That's a good one.
Yeah, I was at a convention. Yeah. I needed money for it. Hotel, convention.
Oh, yes. Now I get it.
Yeah. So like there's always those ways. And now it's, my parents get to come down here for, 3-5 months and they see me every day and there's nothing I have to hide, which is an amazing feeling. But it took a long time to get like that. And I definitely think working with families for Next Level, I really bring my personal experience with that. Because a lot of parents, and I can't say, my kids are young, so I don't know, but is that enabling and just, they don't want anything bad to happen to their kid.
So have you seen, both of you, since you both have different kind of upbringings than I do. And then we'll go into my original thought for this topic, which is different, but it's going to evolve into that. How have you seen both of your parents, like through your change process, like grow and develop and become healthier, or have they not? Because not all families do. Sometimes it's just the person that changes. Have you seen that, Matt?
I think it took some time, and I know my mom she blamed herself, and it was like that Goodwill Hunting moment where I was like, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
And she didn't get that even a couple years into it. And it was like a conversation where it was like a 4-hour car ride driving back to New York, actually, around this time several years ago. I think I probably had like 5 or 6 years at the time. And she kind of alluded to the fact that like she messed up and it was something she did. And like, and Chelsea was in the back seat and she was like, Barbara, like what? What? Yeah. Like still? And we had to have this conversation and it was uncomfortable, but at the same time cleared a lot of the confusion where it's like, you know, I thought we talked about this. I was like, I thought we talked about this. It has nothing to do. Like you guys did an amazing job as parents. Like I just decided I wanted to drink and drug and cross the line where I didn't know how to stop. Yeah. And like no one else in the family can relate to that. And you can't fix it. And you can't throw money at it. And you can't wish it better. You can't give tough love. It's just like the person that needs to get there. And I also get that too, because I'm not a parent. I've worked with kids, so I can only speak from my experience, where I know what worked for me was, hey, I love you. Good luck. Yeah. And if you need anything, call your brothers. And I needed to hear that. And then you hear that from a parent. It's not the parent like, oh, the fucking parent. Like, are you kidding me? I needed to hear that. Like, wow, this is, we've gotten here.
Yeah. And I've seen how deeply your brother loves you. It's like very sweet and beautiful.
And both my brothers, you know, like I said, when I share about my story, they dropped everything. And, you know, I steamrolled over these people. You know, I tried to get honest, but I didn't know how to get honest until I got sober. And I think a lot with families can change, but it takes so much time and it takes so much healing, and it takes them doing work, because the dynamic changes when you're like the little brother and it needs to be rescued all the time. And then that changes. And it's like, okay, now this is different, right? And I remember a therapist talking to me about that. Your family relationships will change. And they have in the nicest possible way. Yeah. You know, and the other thing is like my mom forever, until one of us is not here anymore, you know, can ask me, how are you doing? Are you still going to meetings? And she doesn't, but like I can be okay with that because of what I put her and them through. Totally.
That's great. So it's just being a completely open book. And
right. And
being
just
trustworthy and building it back.
Right. And just kind of sharing. And there's things that in my life that, you know, they might not understand because we do different things, you know, in business or life or whatever. It's like I said, everybody is living their own life or their own lives and really doing whatever they can with it as, you know, parents. And it's cool to come together. I'm excited because this episode will probably air after I go, but I'm like going up to see my family. I do every year to spend some time in New York and New Jersey and just kind of hang out. And now it's crazy because my little nieces and nephews are coming with their significant others. Oh, wow. It's like a bunch of adults now.
Yeah, my son brought his girlfriend on our family vacation. Yeah.
And it's really, and I'm really excited about it. And it's just so cool, but it took a long time.
Takes time
to get there. Yeah, for sure.
How have you seen your family evolve and change, or have they?
Yeah, I mean,
were there moments, like any defining moments that helped you, or was
honestly,
it you?
I remember I told my mom, and this was not, I was obviously newly sober, but I was like, I would have gotten sober if, you didn't enable me so much. And I remember saying that. And now I look back, I'm like, why did I say that? Because it's not true. Right. I would have figured it out another way. But I have to say, my parents are, as I get healthier, they just kind of grow with me. If I need anything, they're definitely there. But they would know for sure. They would definitely ask me, like, what's going on? Like, is something good? If there was something off. I mean, my goal always now is to never ask for money and to be self-sufficient. So if there was a continuation of me asking for money,
they would know something.
They would know, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I tried to get Mama Sandy to like on my bandwagon of like trying to get Sarah to like take some self-care time. And she was like, oh no, we don't do that. And I was like, shit. She's like, Sarah, they don't believe in time off and breaks and mom time. And Now she's got much better, but I try to bully Mama Sandy into that, and it was the wrong way.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
So you guys talked about like the struggle of families, the pain of families, the healing of families. So my thought is like, we deal with it professionally. I've still, in my own personal family, just touching it shortly, I come from like addiction on all sides, found my aunt dead in her bed right before I got into recovery, used her money to pay for the money she left me to pay for my rehab. My mother, we did an intervention on her, some years back, a couple years, 3 or 4 years ago, and she changed her life later. So my story is very different. And my family has evolved and grown. But with the families that we deal with, we get a lot of like, whether it's parents or whether it's like a partner, a wife or a husband, it's like kind of like, here, help my person, and I'm not going to do anything, like just fix my loved one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that because there's, if it's a parent, the child, maybe they didn't do anything wrong, but they have to learn how to do things better and differently to keep on the same path. If there's exes, involved, we deal with that ex-wife and husband with a kid, they have to come together and put their nonsense aside to show up for their child. If it's a wife or a husband, and like a lot of like we just dealt with one that's like primary a marital issue. It's not really the alcohol. There is problem there, but like the core issue, they have to deal with their marital stuff because So what do you think are ways that we struggle with families, and what are ways that we see them evolve and change, like, and where we're seeing the lasting change happen? Sarah?
I mean, I have to say, like, to be honest, it's when, for my experience, everybody's is probably different, when they fully just give us the reins and they listen to everything we say. I can think of, which doesn't happen very often, right? There's always a little pull, but we're here to help them and their family as a whole. So that's why we have the family support coach to help them, and we have our clinical psychologist to do sessions with them. And we work with, the client, and depending on the situation, I think that really just being honest with them, and telling them like, no. Like, I love when a family calls me and they're like, hey, my daughter wants an apartment. What do you think?
Yeah. I like when they come with questions. If you come with
I love
questions,
the questions.
or even if you challenge why we're doing something, what we're doing, and we can help explain it to you, and then you just try it, that I can see benefits. But it's when we say things and people blatantly do the opposite, that their loved one is not going to get better.
Or picking and choosing the information that they're giving us, too. It makes it pretty difficult.
Yeah. I think, as you know, I'm very direct and intense.
Yes.
I like to ask the questions.
I love that about you, Matt.
Yeah.
Like, what are you willing to do? I mean, we're all sitting here. I think, having the family meet separately and then family meeting with the person struggling and hearing, really truly being like, because a lot of the times, again, I'm speaking from experience, just like with working with other, like families obviously here, but, just being a sober person, it's like, what are you willing to do? And then asking them, how are you? Because a lot of the time, the person in the family struggling is getting all, I don't want to say getting all the attention, but they're getting all the attention. And then no one's really asking the person, the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, uncle, whatever it is, how are you?
Yeah.
And like, how are you feeling about this? And the usual response is like, I just want them to get better. No, we're not talking about the person struggling. We're talking about you.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
What do you hope to see happen? What do you want to say? Like, where are you at? And it's sometimes like in interventions that obviously you prepare those things for the person that's struggling to truly hear that from a family, which they don't always do, as you know.
And offer the family that support. We identify the ones that are hurting or struggling, maybe don't feel heard, maybe no one's, and then the moms or dads, it's often a lot of moms that are just in that spiral. They'll do anything to get their kid better, but like take a look at themselves and what they might need to do for themselves too.
Right. And I think that's a big struggle for everyone. And it's just centered around fear and the fear of, again, it's uncharted territory. Like, if this is to change and this person is to get sober and this person is to take the suggestions, what then? Because it's a different dynamic. It's not the sick and suffering family member. It's now this role has changed, hopefully for the better. And now you can't, sometimes those situations, they come, like they stay, well, even though this is painful, it's comfortable because I know it. And changing this and coming out of this, I have to go look at myself now.
Yeah, that's a lot in partnerships, like couples,
so
really romantic. Yeah,
it's so tough to see, and I think just dealing with the family, like the parent. Let's just say the parents. is they've been taking care of their loved one since birth. And when it's that point of like, wow, I'm getting asked what I want. And obviously they want the person to be sober and to be happy and to be joyous and free and living a life of purpose. But then that changes and it's like, well, what do they truly want? What do they truly need? And actually hearing them. And some of them don't know.
Yeah.
Because they've been so focused on the other person, they really have no clue what they want or what they want to see happen for themselves in this process. Yes. And I think it's really helpful to start identifying that. It's like we sat down and it was just like, you know, hey, shh. All right, hey, what is it that you would like? Well, no. Not about him or her. What do you want?
Yeah.
What are you, for that to happen, are you willing to do?
Yep. Getting clear.
Right. And if you're not.
Engaging them in the process.
And if you're not, why?
Yeah.
And it's, well, I don't, it's, well, you're afraid because this is something you've never done before. However, this will help you do things. Like I've suggested to people like, hey, maybe you go to an Al-Anon meeting. Or maybe you go learn a little bit more about what your loved one is struggling, not just the stuff that you've seen. So you have an idea, maybe relate to it, and then be like, and then it's like, oh, I struggle with the same things that my loved one struggles. And rather than bond with it, they like, no, I don't want to take a look at that. And it's really, really tough to take a look at yourself, where you're at.
Especially when you've been in, it's like crisis management, kind of like you living in crisis. And there's how many times in phone screenings for interventions have you asked someone, what do you do for your own self-care? And some of them have no idea what they're talking about.
They don't know.
And they don't do anything. There's couples that are scared that will I love my partner if they're sober? Yeah. Will they love me if they're sober? There's fear of that. There's fear of like, we had a client not long ago that the mom had a version of the Munchausen thing, where she really wanted her daughter, like it was very obvious. She was very comfortable with her daughter staying extremely sick.
So you could take care of her.
And like, and compartmentalized all the different professionals, would not let us collaborate.
That was a hard case. That was really sad.
It was really sad. And the mom, it's a grown woman and seeing the mom really is like comfortable having to like come in and rescue and manage and empowering her to make decisions that are awful for her clinical care. It was very heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the more difficult. I mean, it just shows a lot of times, like when you have that loved one that's, struggles with substance use disorder or mental health, that the family really can just be as sick. It's familiar, like you said, and it's breaking out of that. And I do a lot of the intervention questionnaires for, the people that are going to be in the intervention. And I always ask, what do you do for yourself? And do you need any support from us? And that question, everybody can answer the questions about their loved one, but when you get to that question about themselves,
like,
they don't know how to answer it.
Yeah.
The ones that are really well, immediately, it's funny, you can tell immediately, like, who works on themselves.
Like, I do yoga, I go
gym,
walks, I journal, I go to therapy. But yeah, no, it's mind-blowing. And like, I relate as a mom, like, and you're a mom of young children, but like, so you're all in it and you still find time for yourself and see how important that is and the value of that. But these families are just, I don't know if they never learned this along the way, if they never needed to, but it's such an important piece. And I think people ask, I say our hardest thing sometimes is managing people, managing teams, right? Yeah. Also, families, I'd say, are up there with the hardest. Harder for me than the actual clients themselves. Yeah. Because the clients are coming from a place of desperation and even if they don't like us, I've had people, try to fight me, flick me off, hate me for getting them court ordered.
Yes.
And then take me on boats, on a boat to celebrate their year. Like 2 girls I had court ordered to treatment, became good friends. And so, I mean, there's miraculous stories that happen with the clients, but sometimes it's the families or the partner that are my greatest struggle because they don't want to step up and do what they need to do. They want our team or whatever team is working with them to fix their loved one. And it just doesn't work like that.
Right.
It's called a family disease for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking when you were talking to is, starting from the beginning of an intervention and then them hopefully saying yes and going into treatment. And it reminds me of like, once they get to treatment, a lot of times the family thinks like, okay, they're good, know? And then back to, I've had people like where the loved one that was in treatment got mad that we were communicating, and
then went ghost.
And then they went ghost. Never talked to me again. I've even called to check to, as a concern, never heard back. And that's kind of the stuff. And I'm like, oh, it always breaks my heart. It really does.
It's a ton of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they have to take a look at themselves. And and it's when you're trying a certain way to help somebody and then we've been doing this. And it's like, yeah, and it hasn't worked.
No.
And it hasn't worked ever. And it will never work again. This is how it has to be. And no one wants to hear that. I remember working previous, like years ago, working with a family that it was so hard for them, the tough love approach and not doing and giving. And I said, your kid is incredibly smart and knows how to play both of you and has been doing it for years and will continue to do it unless you stop. And it's like, oh, well, we just love them so much. Okay. Well, if you love them so much, why don't we try something different? Because loving them so much got them to this point.
Yeah.
And I'd really love it if you just try to do this. So every case is different. Every client is different. Every family is different. There are a lot of similarities that we see over and over again. And even sharing that with the people that we work with and just being like, this is what we've seen before. It hasn't really worked unless we work on it. And what are we going to do about it?
And how about those times, like I know we've seen it with the one that we've all worked with in the recent time where we actually saw the family implement those changes and now the person's like killing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's
so
such a good
when
feeling.
Success stories are the best.
Yeah, they are.
when people actually follow the we're not just making these things up and telling them to like make your life challenging. We're trying to help. You hired us because we're good at this and we're professionals and we have experience with this. So trust us just a little bit. And then it might go a long way.
Trust the process.
Yeah,
Trust the process.
That does put a smile on my face. I just
I
think
think
of
it
how
on a
well,
high, on a high note. Well,
and I
thank you
love that
guys.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me and the family.
Yes.
So.
Yes. We love the families. So the families challenge us, and we love them both the same. So thank you guys. This was a great topic. And I think it can help a lot of people, So how can you find all of us? We'll start with you, Mr. Matthew Williams.
Oh man, you can find me. Like I would say my email, but it's so long, so we have to change that. But you can find me on
we need to work on that.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at MWAR Williams. That's probably the easiest one.
And on Meet the Team on Next Level Recovery Associates website.
Well, I figured that was a given.
That's a given.
Yeah, saying personally.
Personally, that's right. And Matt's sporting his FroPro hat. You can also find him on FroPro, everything.
Yeah. I was going to say for all of us, you could find us on consult at nextlevelra.com. That's a little bit shorter. Sorry. And then for my Instagram, it's Sarah with an H, E, Frias, Frias.
And you can no longer find me on Facebook.
I was going to say, your face.
Because somebody hacked it. But you can find my professional pages on there still. Amanda Marino, Behavioral Health Specialist, Next Level Recovery Associates, Amanda Marino Recovery on TikTok and Instagram. And then I'm all over LinkedIn as well. Protect your social media profiles, people.
Yes.
Just a side note.
Yes.
Get that double factor thing and get codes and don't put credit cards in there.
Lesson learned. Lesson learned.
So and Overcoming Adversity podcast does have social medias, which we are updating in the season 2. And we're on YouTube, on all the streaming platforms. And we're excited that you're here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.